Across the kitchen island, my wife slid divorce documents as if sealing a commercial agreement, and when I grabbed the pen without uttering a word of protest, her expression wasn't one of relief. It was puzzlement. For 3 weeks, Vanessa had rehearsed an argument that never manifested. She anticipated tears kneeling from me. Instead, I signed every page, pushed them back to her, and said 4 words that would torment her for years. "Works for me, Vanessa." What she didn't grasp, what she couldn't have comprehended, was that I had already rented an apartment 11 miles away. I had already hired a lawyer, and I had already discovered who she was visiting every Thursday afternoon for the past 5 months. She believed she was terminating something. She was unaware that she was about to witness me constructing something she could never reach again. A month after, as she unexpectedly appeared at my new residence seeking a confrontation she had yet to encounter, the individual seated beside me at the dinner table made her abandon her car keys on my doorstep. My name is Derek Holloway, aged 41, and for the past 14 years, I've managed a commercial HVAC company based in Lakewood, Colorado, situated southwest of Denver. Our services primarily involve installation and maintenance of heating and cooling systems for office buildings, hospitals, and school districts, the essential, but often unacknowledged work that gets noticed only when air conditioning fails in summer. I founded this company with 2 trucks and a loan that filled me with fear. Currently, we operate 19 trucks and employ 41 people, and on many mornings, I still visit job sites myself to remain connected to the actual labor. I encountered Vanessa Prout when I was 27 years old. For over a year, she managed the reception at a dental practice in Golden, engaging daily with 40 distinct individuals whose names she could recall effortlessly. Her laugh, capable of making one believe they had just cracked the funniest joke, was infectious even when none was told. We exchanged vows at a secluded location nearby Red Rocks 18 months later, and for an extended period I would have affirmed that we were content. Perhaps we were. Yet one might argue that happiness is transient for certain individuals, and Vanessa was perpetually seeking the next door to enter. This narrative recounts how my spouse of 13 years declared her intention to end our marriage, the manner in which she expressed it, and the miscalculation of the repercussions. Contrary to popular belief, this is not a tale about a man collapsing under pressure. Instead, it portrays a man who had foreseen the outcome 3 months prior to her announcement. Before delving into how things unraveled, click subscribe to stay updated on the next tale, comment with your location, and like this video if you've ever experienced someone underestimating you at a critical moment. Let's dive in. The first inkling that something was amiss surfaced on a Tuesday in March. Vanessa returned home with an aroma reminiscent of a candle store, not perfume, but the distinctive scent of a small shop overflowing with various fragrances. She claimed she was at Bath Body Works shopping for her sister Renee's birthday present. This seemed reasonable. After all, people do visit candle stores. I paid no mind to it. The second change was more subtle. Previously, Vanessa had left her phone face-up on the kitchen counter while charging overnight, a habit that spanned 13 years of transparency. Around February, this practice ceased. Her phone now rested face down, then eventually moved to her nightstand. Later on, she began bringing it into the bathroom during her showers, an action that had never occurred throughout our entire marriage. I feel compelled to be truthful about something. I'm not a man given to paranoia. I don't search for issues within relationships as some people do, scrutinizing every detail until the bond frays and disintegrates. I manage a business that requires me to remain composed when confronted with an irate customer complaining about a faulty boiler in the cold month of February. I tend not to react to trivial matters. However, several small occurrences, when accumulated, can suggest a pattern. And when I perceive a pattern in a mechanical system, I can't help but notice it repeatedly. It turns out that people aren't unlike mechanical systems. They often give hints of impending trouble before a catastrophic failure occurs. Thursdays emerged as the significant day. From late February onwards, every Thursday saw Vanessa scheduling an appointment, initially for a new Pilates class in Highlands Ranch. 3 distinct explanations over 3 months for an apparently consistent Thursday event raised suspicions. Truthful individuals would not require multiple excuses for a single engagement. A straightforward response about the destination is all that is needed. In April, I did something questionable yet unrepentant. I reached out to my longtime friend Sal Mancuso, who previously handled loss prevention for an auto parts chain and now works independently on skip tracing and surveillance from an office in Aurora's strip mall. Sal and I go back to high school days. He was not overly curious when I contacted him. "Are you certain about this, Derek?" he asked. "Once you know, you can't unknow it." "I am already aware of something, Sal. I just don't know what it is." He initiated the following Thursday. In 9 days, a manila folder filled with photographs was delivered to me, yet what these images revealed wasn't the most painful aspect. Vanessa was encountering a man named Bradley Coons at a townhouse complex situated off South Wadsworth Boulevard, a typical mid-range rental community featuring an unused pool and a leasing office closing at 5. It was later discovered that Bradley Coons was a 34-year-old divorcee who had been the regional sales rep selling Vanessa's real estate brokerage software, including their CRM system, 8 months prior. They had first met at a vendor lunch. My wife had been commuting for 40 minutes each Thursday to spend 3 hours in a rented townhouse belonging to this man, since approximately the same week she stopped leaving her phone face up on the counter. I remained parked in a Walgreens parking lot for 40 minutes following the moment Sal handed me that folder, without shedding tears. I'd like to share that I remained composed instead of crying, as this might resonate more with the tale. However, in reality, I experienced an unusual sense of tranquility, much like one feels in the center of a storm about to return. I had constructed a company by keeping my cool when everyone else was in a frenzy. This incident was simply another system malfunctioning. To proceed, I required data, followed by a strategy, and only then did any emotional space open up for me. The needed data surfaced swiftly once I initiated the search. I reviewed our combined bank statements, discovering an unfamiliar credit card, which Vanessa had obtained under her maiden name Prut. 6 months prior charges totaling $2,200 at restaurants I hadn't visited, a hotel bill from Steamboat Springs, linked to a trip she claimed was with her sister Renee, and recurring payments for a storage unit in Lakewood that I wasn't aware of. Investigating the storage unit required 3 days of courage, but I no longer regret my decision. After finding the spare key hidden within her gym bag lining, I confirmed my suspicions. The storage unit held items typically concealed by a woman who had decided to leave, several months in advance. Unfamiliar garments in boxes, a jewelry collection not mine, unsolicited gifts not recognized from our shared past, alongside a stack of Denver Highlands one-bedroom apartment listings, all fitting a single woman's budget, hinting at her determination to sever ties without seeking financial support from her soon-to-be ex-husband. Vanessa wasn't merely unfaithful. She was meticulously planning her escape, presuming I was oblivious to her intentions. This juncture in our story marked a pivotal moment for me, and I wish to share my train of thought as it reveals more about character than the act of betrayal ever could. 2 paths lay before me. Option 1, instantly challenge Vanessa, shout, demand explanations. However, upon careful reflection, I chose a different course of action. Instead of instigating a humiliating confrontation leading to tears and apologies for approximately 6 weeks and returning to Bradley Coons' rented townhouse with the unutilized pool, I opted for silence. My strategy was to let her carry out her scheme while secretly planning my own moves, so by the time she uttered the words, I would be several steps ahead of the Derek she anticipated encountering. I want to make it clear that this wasn't about revenge initially. It was about self-respect. I didn't want Vanessa Prut dictating the timeline of the most distressing moment in my life. If she intended to shatter our marriage, she would do so on a stage where I had already relocated all the furniture. Thus, for the following 11 weeks, I led a dual existence that I never believed I was capable of. At home, I remained the same Derek as always. Regularly, somewhat fatigued by work, inquiring about her day, preparing coffee each morning. Inside, I was engaged in what I later realized was the most disciplined task of my adult years. Initially, the residence. I secured a 2-bedroom apartment in a repurposed loft building situated in Rhino District, River North, north of downtown Denver. The place was filled with original brick and steel beams from its warehouse past, a mere 15 minutes from my workplace, offering a stark contrast to our suburban cul-de-sac home we had shared for 9 years. I rented the unit under a corporate name linked to my business, paid both the first and last month in cash from an account that was hidden from Vanessa's view, and informed the leasing office that I wouldn't be moving in immediately. I wanted it ready and waiting, not hastily done. Second, the lawyer. I contacted a divorce attorney named Patricia Voss, whose practice was located on Spear Boulevard's third floor, boasting a view of the Platte River. Patricia, known for her silence, accuracy, and relentlessness in court matters, listened attentively as I presented my case during our initial consultation: the storage unit, the credit card transactions, the CCTV footage, the rental property listings. "I comprehend," Patricia stated, looking at me over her spectacles, "that in Colorado, infidelity generally doesn't affect the financial settlement of a divorce. We are an equitable distribution state, not a fault state." I acknowledged her statement. "I'm aware," I said. "This isn't about financially penalizing her. I'm seeking fairness and proper documentation to avoid future surprises from this woman." Patricia gave a slow nod, implying she appreciated my response more than anticipated. "1. To ensure you're not caught off guard when the conversation occurs, we'll assemble a comprehensive file for you. First, I needed to clarify my own finances independently, an aspect I hadn't bothered with before due to 13 years of married life blurring the boundaries. I mixed our money like most couples do, but upon closer examination, I discovered more individual assets than I thought. The business I established and incorporated 3 years prior to meeting Vanessa, a 401(k) that was mainly mine pre-marriage, and a life insurance policy I'd wisely kept my mother as the beneficiary instead of Vanessa, for reasons I can't fully articulate except that some instinctive part of me had never completely relaxed. Additionally, I did something unexpected even Patricia found noteworthy. I began recording our marriage, not in a vindictive manner, but to keep track of important moments and memories. Instead of secretly recording conversations, I began jotting down observations in a journal. Every late Thursday arrival, every fragile excuse, each instance where Vanessa lashed out over trivial matters, which I now realize was her guilt finding an outlet elsewhere. I meticulously noted the dates, as Patricia warned me about memory's unreliability when emotions are involved. "Paper," she said, "doesn't falter." The most challenging aspect of those 11 weeks wasn't the planning. It was the Sunday dinners at my in-laws in Wheatridge, where I found myself seated opposite Carol, still embracing me like a son, and Jean, who continued to discuss the Broncos game as if everything remained unchanged. Renee, Vanessa's sister, seemed to be the only one who harbored suspicions. She watched me keenly whenever Vanessa stepped away, scrutinizing my demeanor, perhaps trying to ascertain whether I was privy to what she already knew. I didn't need Renee to confirm my suspicions. I had a manila folder for that. A peculiar, almost serene clarity sustained me through the ordeal. My anger wasn't the kind you'd normally expect. I swiftly overcame it, much like how I quickly forget an unfavorable customer review, as dwelling on it doesn't rectify the situation. Instead, I remained focused. Interestingly, focus proves to be a more treacherous emotion than rage. Rage makes you reckless, while focus instills patience. On a Wednesday in early June, roughly 3 months after Sal Mancuso began his surveillance, the night Vanessa admitted the truth unfolded in our kitchen. The one we purchased together 8 years ago in Lakewood, renowned for its excellent morning light, and the maple tree Vanessa insisted on planting the week we moved in. While preparing dinner, a common weeknight meal we'd cooked countless times, I was there with her. Upon entering from the garage, she placed her purse forcefully on the kitchen island and stayed still. "Derek, I have something to tell you. I'm ending this marriage," she declared swiftly, as if bracing for interruption. Her hands trembled slightly, a detail I caught. In that instant, everything seemed hyperreal, the way the overhead light glinted on her face, how she had partially removed her wedding ring as if she'd practiced the action in the bathroom mirror. I turned off the stove burner, dried my hands on the towel hanging from the oven handle, and gazed at her, the woman I'd loved for 13 years, a woman I'd been preparing to lose for the past 3 months. "All right," I replied. "Just all right," she echoed, as if the word felt out of place in her mouth. 13 years and merely a statement from you, Derek. I could have exposed it all in that moment. I could have scattered the photos on the kitchen counter near your purse, observed your expression transform through each phase of being caught, from denial to rage, tears, pleading. A part of me, the one still aching beneath my meticulous preparations, desired just that. But I had made up my mind months ago not to provide Vanessa the dramatic showdown she could later recast as my loss of control or coercion into divorce. I wouldn't let her claim a narrative where she became the victim of my reaction rather than the creator of her own decisions. "Fine with me, Vanessa," I replied. I noticed a complex emotion play across your face. Mainly confusion, a fleeting hint of something that could have been even disappointment, which I found oddly amusing. For what exactly were you anticipating? Tears? A spectacle? It seemed to me that Vanessa may have wanted me to struggle for the marriage so she could validately depart from it. However, my composure removed any such justification from her before she had the chance. "Aren't you going to ask why?" she inquired. "I believe I already understand," I responded, keeping things deliberately unclear and observing as she attempted to discern how much I knew. "Are we discussing practicalities, or would you prefer to handle this through lawyers?" she asked. "Lawyers," I replied swiftly, like it was what she had hoped I'd say initially. "I just happen to have," she started. "I already have a lawyer," I interrupted, the last sentence falling with more impact than any other words I spoke. I watched as her eyes blinked and readjusted, trying to determine when precisely her husband had obtained a lawyer's contact information. In truth, I had Patricia Voss's number saved for 2.5 months. That night, we didn't argue. The following morning, there was no argument as Vanessa relocated to the guest room, her packing method hinting at prolonged mental preparation for this transition. In less than a week, divorce papers arrived. Russell Pemberton, whose office was downtown and who specialized in swift, superficially amicable paperwork according to Patricia's later description, represented Vanessa. Each page of the documents was read by me, and I signed every page. Patricia had previously gone over a draft that Russell had sent, and together we ensured the proposed terms were equitable, neither generous nor harsh, simply fair as desired. The house would be sold, with the profits shared proportionately based on our individual investments. In the divorce settlement, my business, premarital 401k, and small inheritance from my father remained mine, as Vanessa's attorney did not contest their designation as separate property, which had been clearly documented for over a decade. What seemed unexpected to Vanessa, I believe, was the rapid pace of events. I didn't delay or hesitate. I signed the documents within 72 hours of receiving them. It appears that Vanessa may have anticipated a protracted fight, allowing her to stay in the house for a while longer, maintaining an emotional limbo where she could depart the marriage without having to leave behind the comfort of the life we had built. However, I did not grant her this delay. By the end of June, the house was put up for sale. By mid-July, I received the keys to my loft in Rhino. I would like to address a point that often goes unnoticed in stories such as this: the sensation of moving into an empty apartment after 13 years of marriage. The scene isn't what one might anticipate in a film. There's no grand montage celebrating victory. Instead, it's you, boxes, and an unfamiliar space that hasn't yet grown accustomed to your footsteps. For the first week in this loft, I slept on a mattress on the floor, waiting for my bed frame to arrive. Some nights I'd merely lie there, gazing at the brick ceiling exposed above me, listening to the distant rumble of trains, experiencing a tranquil blend of relief and sorrow, an emotion I can scarcely put into words. It's possible to grieve a marriage and feel liberated from it simultaneously. That's not something anyone tells you. They make it seem like you must choose one path. But here's the truth about grief. At least in my experience, it doesn't halt productivity. In fact, it offered me an unusual motivation. That summer, I immersed myself in my business with a vigor I hadn't felt in years. Recently acquired 2 commercial contracts, one with a hospital network expanding a wing in Aurora, and another with a school district in Jefferson County, updating boiler systems across 6 buildings. My longtime foreman, Tobias Reyes, commented on my swiftness during the quoting process, saying, "You're unusually efficient lately, boss." I didn't disclose the reason. Coincidentally, an unexpected event took place during this busy period, something unplanned, unwarranted, and unforeseen, making it significant. My sister, Paige Holloway, who resides in Chicago and works as an occupational therapist, arrived in Denver at the end of July. She came to help me settle into the new home, and I suspect, due to her concern for my well-being, a feeling she's held since our childhood despite being 2 years younger than me. On that trip, Paige had her college friend Whitney Castellano with her, who'd recently gone through a divorce 18 months prior and, as per Paige, could comfort you without causing tears during the conversation. On a Saturday afternoon, Whitney arrived to aid me in unpacking boxes, sporting paint-spattered overalls for the occasion. Within approximately 20 minutes, she had rearranged my entire kitchen in a way that made sense, something I couldn't have accomplished in a month on my own. Her humor was dry and observant, the kind of person who observes everything in a room and makes a witty remark about it at the right moment. "You've got 4 mugs but no plates," she commented, looking into a cardboard box. "What seemed to be your strategy here, Derek? A coffee-only lifestyle." I had planned to acquire plates eventually. The planned occurrence was intended to happen prior to your arrival. That evening, we opted for takeout and sat on my partially furnished living room floor, eating from paper containers since I hadn't acquired a single plate yet. Whitney, like us, had grown up in Lake Wood and worked as a project manager for a downtown architecture firm, providing commercial designs. It was serendipitous that we shared a significant connection beyond our recent breakups. For the sake of clarity, let me emphasize that I hadn't gone there with any intentions that night. I wasn't trying to make a statement to Vanessa or rushing into a new relationship as a rebuttal. I was simply a weary man consuming lo mein off an unoccupied apartment floor, conversing with someone who had elicited laughter from me for the first time in several months. Initially, this was all there was to it. However, Whitney and I continued to discover excuses to meet up over the ensuing weeks. She would arrive post-work with takeout food, claiming she coincidentally lived nearby, a claim Rhino unequivocally refuted as she traveled from downtown. I reached out to her concerning furniture selections since I was clueless about the subject. By September, 3 months following Vanessa's declaration in our old kitchen, Whitney Castellano and I were, without either of us explicitly acknowledging it, a couple. Meanwhile, Vanessa's narrative took an entirely different course, which I became aware of only gradually, partly through Renee, who eventually showed leniency towards me once the divorce was finalized, and partly as details emerged during the property settlement process. In contrast to Vanessa's imagined future with Bradley Coons, a software sales representative residing in a townhouse on South Wadsworth, events unfolded differently. Renee indicated that their relationship had noticeably deteriorated by August. Apparently, Bradley never seriously intended to depart from his own intricate post-divorce circumstances for a meaningful relationship. The relationship that Vanessa sacrificed 13 years of marriage over was as substantial as the rented townhouse with an idle pool. By the time our divorce became final in October, Bradley, according to Renee, was practically non-existent, implying that he had acted like men in his position typically do when a clandestine affair progresses towards actual commitment. Vanessa shifted to an apartment from the pile of listings I uncovered in her storage unit, a 1-bedroom in the Highlands, situated in a decent building, located within a respectable neighborhood. It seemed like an excellent choice on a budget until she was the sole name on the lease and had to cover all expenses by herself. That year, her work at the brokerage saw a considerable reduction in activity. The real estate market in Denver's metropolitan area had cooled off from its initial boom, and commission-based income doesn't tolerate an expenditure plan predicated on a constant secondary income. I didn't acquire this knowledge intentionally. It's important to clarify that I wasn't spying on her. However, Denver, despite being a vast metropolitan area housing close to 3 million people, can feel surprisingly compact when your social circles begin to intersect even slightly, and news travels through mutual acquaintances and kin regardless of whether you actively seek it or not. It is clear that in late October, coinciding with our divorce becoming final in Jefferson County District Court, Vanessa contacted me personally for the first time in months, bypassing Russell Pemberton and Patricia to text me directly on my personal phone. The message read, "Can we talk? I think we ended things poorly and I'd like to clear the air. V." I pondered this message for nearly 2 days before responding. While a part of me wished to disregard it entirely, another part, the one that had invested 13 years in constructing a life with her, felt a sense of obligation, not for reconciliation or reopening old wounds, but for a basic closure that adults who have shared over a decade together might deserve, even if one had shattered the other's trust to reach this point. "Yes," I replied. "I'm hosting a few guests for dinner at my place on Saturday. If you wish to discuss earlier, please arrive around 6 o'clock. I'm transparent about my reasons for phrasing it that way. It wasn't intended as a trap, but rather to make things less tense if Vanessa arrived before other guests so we could converse, and she could depart without complicating matters. However, what I hadn't fully considered, and I openly acknowledge this, is how Saturday's events would actually play out. As it turned out, I had invited Paige and her husband Marcus, not linked to anyone in this tale, mere coincidence of a common name, for a casual dinner at the loft. Nothing extravagant. By then, I had acquired genuine plates, four-place settings of plain white stoneware that Whitney had chosen, labeling my taste in dishware as criminally boring, but at least inoffensive. Vanessa informed she was running late, and it wasn't until 6:4 that she showed up from the building's entrance. Whitney had arrived early to assist with cooking, while Paige and Marcus were taking their seats on the couch, and the entire apartment was filled with the aroma of the rosemary chicken I'd been preparing since 4:00. The same dish I prepared the night Vanessa made that comment in our old kitchen, a choice not symbolic on my part, just something I happened to cook well. I let Vanessa into the apartment and greeted her at the door. She appeared well, superior to my anticipation, truthfully, clad in a dark green sweater and sporting a hairstyle I identified as her unfazed style, a type of exertion only someone acquainted with her for 13 years would recognize as effort at all. For a moment, standing in the doorway of my freshly acquired apartment, there was something somewhat ordinary about her face, as if she was preparing herself to tender an apology she'd practiced en route. "Hey," she began, "thanks for allowing me." But then she paused because she could discern beyond me into the apartment, into the expansive living room where Paige was chuckling at something Marcus had said, and where Whitney was standing casually at my kitchen island, relaxed, untroubled, arranging chicken onto plates that Vanessa had never witnessed, in an apartment Vanessa had never visited, alongside a man she'd parted ways with 4 months ago. I observed the recognition dawn on her visage in real time. It didn't happen instantly. Initially, there was bewilderment. Who is that woman? Why does she appear so familiar in this kitchen? She handles the salt and pepper shakers as if she's well acquainted with their locations. This prompts recognition, for Paige acknowledges her, saying, casually, affectionately, "Vanessa, it's been a while," in a tone that suggests forgetting her presence could cause a minor explosion of familiarity. Finally, the truth dawned on Vanessa's face. The woman in my kitchen wasn't an unfamiliar guest or a random date to prove a point. She was already part of my life. She had previously met my sister. She felt at ease enough in my home to be the one serving the meal. "I didn't know you were hosting guests," Vanessa remarked, her voice significantly more tense than before. "I mentioned I'd invited a few people over," I replied calmly. "You're invited to step in for a brief chat if you wish to continue discussing." To depict the expression on Vanessa's face accurately and truthfully, as it is the most genuine moment of this narrative, I will do my best. It was not anger, but rather a bewilderment that arises when one acknowledges that life carries on without them, unyieldingly and comprehensively, during the time it takes to comprehend what has been lost. It seemed that somewhere within Vanessa, despite all that had transpired, there remained a hope that I would be alone in this apartment, nursing my wound from her departure, awaiting a chance for her return if she ever decided to take it. This notion faded upon seeing Whitney Castellano laugh at something my brother-in-law said while wearing one of my kitchen towels tied around her waist, as though she'd resided there for years. "I believe I'll leave now," Vanessa whispered softly. "You needn't," I replied, sincerely meaning it. I didn't aim to forcefully eject her, but it was her decision. One final glance, she surveyed the cozy, inhabited tableau in my apartment, the flat from the rental agreement, a space I had occupied 3 months prior to her utterance. I had crafted this sanctuary beneath the one she believed she governed. A visible sigh escaped her, as if all the air was leaking out of her slowly rather than in a rush. "I'm fine with that," she conceded, and it seemed unlikely she intended the retort as a jibe as it appeared to be. The words simply slipped out due to lack of other fitting alternatives. She turned, retraced her steps down the hallway towards the elevator, marking our last direct conversation. Vanessa Prout and I never exchanged words again. I won't feign that the encounter in the doorway brought me a satisfying, climactic victory, for life isn't usually so dramatized. Observing her departure stirred within me an emotion subtler and intricate than triumph, a sorrowful reflection of the 13 years that signified significance despite the subsequent events. Simmering beneath this sorrow was a sentiment less vengeful and more alleviating, resembling the relief of a man who, after months of anticipation, found himself in a secure shelter post an expected detonation. That evening's meal was enjoyable. Whitney cracked a jest about encountering the elusive Vanessa, presented with a touch of levity that caused Paige to chuckle rather than heightening the tension. And we carried on, as one does, adhering to life's compulsion, regardless of readiness. In the ensuing months, my enterprise continued to expand. We secured a hospital system contract in Aurora that almost doubled our commercial clients in a year, allowing me to hire a competent project manager, Hector Delgado, for the first time in years, providing some respite from my 10-year stretch of 70-hour workweeks. Soon after, Whitney and I moved into a slightly larger apartment nearby, closer to our original loft, with enough dishes for dinner parties and a proper bed frame from the start. Word had it that Vanessa, through Renee, left her real estate brokerage to join a smaller firm closer to her new home, settling for a lower title and wage, which she apparently justified as seeking a fresh start. As far as anyone in Vanessa's circle could gather, Bradley Coons shifted his focus to selling software in a different region entirely, and was effectively out of the picture within a year after our divorce concluded. I find no personal pleasure in it. By then, I believe I had ceased comparing my life to hers. Late at night, when trains pass near our apartment as they once did the loft, I often ponder how much differently I could have managed things. In that initial week following Sal Mancuso giving me the manila folder, I could have shouted, confronted her in the driveway, released 13 years of pain in a way that would have given temporary relief but lost all my future influence. Instead, I opted for a slower, more challenging path. I opted to mourn silently, plan meticulously, and let Vanessa's own decisions ultimately catch up with her, rather than my responses to them. What I believe is most significant from this narrative is not the scene at the doorway, nor the rosemary chicken, but rather the revelation that comes with it. When someone consistently demonstrates who they are, as seen through their actions on Thursdays, the storage unit, and the various excuses for a single appointment, there's no need to be astonished. No scene is required. The strongest response can sometimes be knowing in advance and already planning something better, long before they find the courage to speak their truth aloud. In retrospect, Vanessa may not have been terminating our marriage that night in our old kitchen. Instead, she was merely the last person to realize that it had effectively ended months earlier, on a Tuesday afternoon in a Walgreens parking lot, when a manila folder finally revealed everything I needed to understand.